We are continuing today, Mirz Hashem, in Pirkei Avos, and we find ourselves in Perek Aleph, Mishna base, Chapter 1, Mishna 2. So if you remember again, in this Mishnah, we're quoting Shimon HaTzadik. Shimon HaTzadik explains that the world stands upon three things. We focused on the first item of the three, Torah, and today we're going to focus on Avoda and Gemilas Chasodim. So the Rabbeinu Yonah writes, what does Avoda mean? So remember, on the most basic level, Avoda represents karbanos, sacrificial service. So what does it mean that the world stands on sacrificial service? So the Rabbeinu Yonah writes, he says, Ki HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Bachar b'Yisrael mikol ha'umos. Hashem chose Klal Yisrael amongst all the nations, Ubachar b'Eretz Yisrael mikol ha'aratzos, and chose Eretz Yisrael from amongst all of the lands, Ubachar es Yisrael mikol Eretz Yisrael, Ubachar Yisrael es Sion. So there's a progression. Hashem chooses Klal Yisrael from amongst the nations. He chooses Eretz Yisrael from amongst the lands. And then in Eretz Yisrael, Yerushalayim is the holiest city. And in Yerushalayim, the Harabayis, the Makom HaMikdash, is the holiest place. Ubachar bebeis habechira b'shvil avoda. And why is the Beis HaMikdash, what makes the Beis HaMikdash the holiest place in the world? Ultimately, again, it's the fact that sacrificial service was performed there. Hinei lecha ki mipnei ha'avoda nivra kol ha'olam kulo. The Rabbeinu Yonah says this is what the Mishna means when it says the world was created for avoda, for karbanos. Now, what does this mean, and how are we to understand it? On a basic level, what a carbon represents is the ability to take something that is absolutely holy and fully material, like an animal, and to go ahead and offer it up in the service of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What is the entire essence of our lives? What is the entire goal? The entire goal is to take our physicality, to take our materialism, to take everything that is gashmi, material in our lives, and to somehow find a way to use it in our service of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The paradigmatic example of this process is the offering up of a karban. I take something totally gashmi, totally material, and I use it in the service of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So what does it mean when we say that the world stands on avoda, the world stands on karbanos? The world was created for the purpose of allowing us the gift, the opportunity, the privilege of taking the material and ultimately finding a way to use it in the service of the spiritual. But says Rabbeinu Yonah, but now unfortunately we lost the Beis HaMikdash, we lost karbanos, and therefore what? Tefillah Elenu achsha bimkoma. So now what we have instead of karbanos are tefillah. Tefillah, prayer, took the place ultimately again of karbanos. And the Rabbeinu Yonah goes on and he says something absolutely beautiful. So firstly he quotes Chazal, quotes Gemara Maseches Tainis, Ulavdo b'chol levavchem. What does it mean to serve Hashem with all of your heart? Ezu avodah shevalev. What is service of the heart? Havi omer zu tefillah. This is prayer. This is prayer. So in its essence, according to the Rabbeinu Yonah, avoda means karbanos. In the absence of the Beis HaMikdash, so karbanos are replaced with tefillah, which even before we go on is such an incredible idea, because we often look at tefillah as the mechanism through which I attain my needs. And of course that's true. That's true. That a major part of tefillah is the ability to dialogue with HaKadosh Baruch Hu so that I can get help with the things I need help with. But you clearly see from this Mishnah that tefillah represents something bigger. Tefillah is avoda is one of the reasons for which the world was created, which essentially tells us that what does tefillah do? Tefillah creates relationship, much like we saw in Torah. And part of the privilege we have, and part of the purpose we have in creation, is to allow for the creation or the establishment of a relationship with Hashem. And there is no thing which provides us a greater platform and vehicle for that relationship than tefillah. The Rabbeinu Yonah here says something startling. He says, "V'zeh she'omer Hashem sefasai tiftach," quotes the pasuk in Tehillim, where David HaMelech says, "Hashem opened my lips." So the Rabbeinu Yonah makes a startling observation. I'm going to quote to you first outside, then we can talk about it inside afterwards. The Rabbeinu Yonah says, there is a dynamic in which prayer itself is even more powerful than karbanos. How so? This is incredible. Rabbeinu Yonah explains, you can't bring a karban for a mezid. If a person purposely transgresses a particular aveira, you can't bring a karban for atonement. There's no atonement process for mezid. You could do tshuva, but karbanos are not brought for any intentional act. And then Rabbeinu Yonah says, herein lies the power of prayer. Tefillah has the ability to even work for an intentional act. Isn't that incredible? That even if I intentionally, chas v'shalom, do an aveira, tefillah can help me go ahead and repair that. A karban can't do that, but tefillah can. So isn't that incredible? That here you see that even though, of course, the ideal, even though the ideal is that we should have a Beis Hamikdash and we should be able to go ahead and have karbanos, but the absence of the mikdash and the absence of karbanos almost like opened up another avenue, that avenue of prayer that allows us to atone and allows us to affect change in ways that karbanos could not. Incredible. The last of the three pillars upon which the world was for, the last of the three things for which the world was created is Gemilas Chasadim. So the Rabbeinu Yonah writes, he says over here, Gedol Gemilas Chasadim Yosem Min Tzedakah. Quotes over the Gemara Masechah Sukkah. So remember, Gemilas Chasadim means acts of kindness. And in this respect, Rabbeinu Yonah writes that acts of kindness are even greater than charity, than tzedakah. How so? So the Rabbeinu Yonah explains, because at the end of the day, so tzedakah is only done for the poor. Right? Tzedakah is done for the poor, whereas Gemilas Chasodim, acts of charitable kindness, are done both for the rich and for the poor. Incredible. He says, Gemilas Chasodim, acts of charitable kindness, can be done both with your money and with your body. Tzedakah, ultimately, again, is done with your body. So this is really an incredible idea, this concept of chesed, which is not simply giving tzedakah to aniyim, but chesed represents this wholesale commitment to try to do good for the other and to try to do good by the other. The Rabbeinu Yonah, then he explains something very beautiful. He says as follows, another example of Gemilas Chasadim, he writes, Laseis lahem eitzah, is to give advice. Isn't that incredible? That, in other words, if you have the ability to help someone with words, right? It could be literal advice. He writes over here, Laseis lahem eitzah k'moshe amar Shlomo HaMelech, shemenu kutoros yisamach leiv umesek re'eh me'atzas nefesh. Kelomar, he goes on, he says, Kishiyitin lo eitzah tova yismach aleha. Because when you give someone good advice, it creates such joy. V'hi midas chesed goremes liyos ratzon lifnei Hashem. Ubeshvila nivra olam gedei laso. So why did Hashem create the world? Hashem created the world because the world offers us the opportunity to do good for each other. And not just to give money. Sometimes, for different people have different challenges. Some people have a lot of difficulty parting with their money. And some people, giving money is easy, but they don't really want to give of themselves. Now, of course, in Yiddishkeit, we have to do both. We have to give of our money. We have a concept of tzedakah. But we're also obligated to give of ourselves, to give of our time, to give of our compassion, to give of our empathy, to give counsel, to give advice, to give a helpful word, a little bit of chizuk. That's called Gemilas Chasadim. And why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu go out and create the world? So as to allow us to do chesed for one another. And this is really incredible. Because remember, in the Olam HaEmes, in the celestial sphere, there's no concept of Gemilas Chasadim. Because at the end of the day, in the celestial sphere, everyone has everything they need. There are no deficiencies. Right? The opportunity for chesed only applies here in this world. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu created this world so as to allow us to bestow chesed upon each other. Chesed with our money, chesed with our time, chesed with our resources, chesed with a kind word, chesed with good advice. That's why the world was created. Incredible. So now again, one simple little Mishnah, we see it's not simple at all, but we see the three reasons for which the world was created. Ultimately, again, Torah, which represents a covenantal relationship, an ability to create relationship between Hashem and Kalal Yisrael. Avoda, karbanos, the ability to take the material and ultimately elevate it into the spiritual, then later on replaced by tefillah, offering us once again the opportunity to create relationship, and Gemilas Chasadim, that whereas Torah and Avoda are much more focused on the world was created to establish a relationship with Hashem, Gemilas Chasadim ultimately teaches us that Hashem created the world so as to allow us to help and to establish relationships with one another. Shkai Chavan will stop here for today. Have a great day.